The plate shattered against the wall just inches from Ngozi's head, and the whole kitchen went silent. "You stole it," Chidinma said, her voice calm, almost pleased. "Everybody in this house knows you stole it. Now open your mouth and say it." Ngozi did not shout. She did not even lift her eyes at first. She knelt down slowly and began gathering the broken pieces with her bare hands, one sharp white shard after another, the way she had been gathering every broken thing in that house for 9 years. "I did not touch your money, Chidinma," she said quietly, "and you can repeat it from now until midnight. That will not make it true." Mama Cordelia stepped forward, and the back of her hand came down hard across the girl's cheek. The sound of it filled the room. "After everything we have given you," the woman hissed, "after we carried you on our heads like our own child, this is how you thank us, by bringing shame into this house in front of strangers." But there was something nobody in that kitchen knew. There was a man standing just outside the open doorway, well-dressed, very still, who had heard every single word. He did not look angry. He looked certain, like a man who had finally found the answer to a question he had been carrying for a long time. Nobody recognized him. Nobody understood why a girl who owned nothing could matter to a man like that. And nobody in that house had the smallest idea that within 3 months, every single person who raised a hand against Ngozi Okafor would stand before a consequence they could not lie their way out of. But to understand how a poor orphan girl ended up changing the lives of everyone who looked down on her, we have to go back to the beginning. We have to go back to the morning it all started. Grab something to drink and stay with me to the end, because you will not believe how this one ends. Ngozi Okafor woke that morning at exactly 4:47, the way she did every morning. Before the cock crowed, before the sky had any color in it at all, she did not need an alarm. 9 years of the same life had built a clock inside her body, and the clock told her one thing: get up before they wake, or there will be trouble. She slept on a thin foam mattress in the small room behind the kitchen. The room that used to store yam and old buckets before they decided it was good enough for her. The roof leaked when it rained. In Harmattan, the cold crept in through the cracks in the wall and settled in her bones. But it was hers, the one place in that house where nobody shouted, and she had learned to be grateful for small mercies. She folded her wrapper, tied her old faded scarf over her cornrows, and stepped out into the dark compound. The air was cool and smelled of dust and the neighbor's firewood. She took the broom and began, the way she always began, with the long sweep of the compound, corner to corner around the cars behind the generator house, until the red earth was clean and patterned with the marks of her broom. By the time the first light touched the sky, she had already swept the compound, washed the plates from the night before, scrubbed the kitchen floor, fetched 4 buckets of water from the borehole 2 streets away, and set the firewood for the morning tea. Her back already ached. She had not eaten since the small ball of iba she managed the night before. But she did not complain, because in that house, complaining was a luxury for people who had options, and Ngozi had none. She remembered, sometimes, when life was different. She remembered a man with kind eyes and rough hands, who used to lift her onto his shoulders and call her his precious one. That was her father, Pa Okeka Okafor, a primary school teacher in Umuahia who never raised his voice to her, not once in all the years he was alive. He greeted everybody on the street by name. He gave away half of what little he had. When he smiled, the whole room felt warmer, and when he died of a fever that the chemist's medicine could not touch, Ngozi was 10 years old, and the warmth went out of her world like a lamp blown out by the wind. Her mother had gone even earlier when Ngozi was only 6, so the memories of her were soft now, broken into small pieces. A gentle hand straightening a dress. A song hummed low in the evening while the soup boiled. The smell of palm oil and sunlight soap. The way her mother used to call her name when the food was ready. Juzi! Stretching it out like it was something precious. Those pieces had grown faint with the years, but they had never left her completely. On the hardest days, she held them in her mind like a person holding a candle against a great darkness. After her father died, the woman who took charge of the house was Mama Cordelia Okafor, her father's second wife. The woman he had married 3 years before he died, when Ngozi was 7. A marriage everybody in the family had quietly warned him against. Mama Cordelia was not the kind of woman who hid her dislike. She was sharp-tongued and controlling, and there was always something to be angry about. If Ngozi woke early, it was not early enough. If she swept the compound, Mama Cordelia would find one dry leaf in a corner and call it laziness. If the girl cooked and washed and fetched and cleaned from morning to night, the woman would still look at her as though she had spent the whole day sleeping. And then there was Chidinma. Chidinma Okafor was Mama Cordelia's own daughter from before her marriage, a year older than Ngozi, 20 years old now. She loved fine things, loved attention, loved the sound of her own laughter. She painted her nails and pressed her hair and walked through the house as if the floors Ngozi's scrubbed were beneath her feet by right. To Chidinma, Ngozi was not a sister, was not even a person. She was furniture. She was the hand that fetched and carried, and on the days Chidinma was bored, Ngozi was entertainment. That morning, when the sun fully risen, Mama Cordelia came out onto the veranda in her wrapper and stood with her arms folded, watching Ngozi scrub the last of the pots. "Ngozi," she called. "Yes, Ma." The girl wiped her hands on her wrapper and came quickly. "This afternoon you will go to Madame Ifeoma's restaurant. They need extra hands for the big event on Saturday. She is paying. You will go and help and bring the money back to me. Every kobo, you hear me? Don't let me hear that you ate their food or collected anything for yourself." "Yes, Ma, what time should I? Are you now my timekeeper? When I tell you to go, you go. Foolish girl." "Yes, Ma." Madame Ifeoma Anozi ran the most respected event catering business in that part of Enugu. Her food was famous. The wealthy families booked her months in advance for their weddings and burials and child dedications, and she was known for two things: food that made grown men weep with joy, and a temper that made grown men weep with fear. She did not tolerate laziness or dishonesty in her kitchen. People said Madame Ifeoma could smell a liar from across the room. Ngozi had worked for her 4 times before, and each time Mama Cordelia had collected every naira. But Ngozi did not mind the work. In Madame Ifeoma's kitchen, nobody slapped her, nobody called her useless. The other workers laughed and gossiped and shared their food, and for a few hours Ngozi could pretend she was just a normal girl earning normal money, with a normal life waiting for her at home. Before she left for the restaurant, she did one more thing. The thing she did most mornings, the small secret kindness that the people in that house would have beaten her for if they ever found out. In the corner of the compound, near the gate, there was an old woman the neighborhood called Mama Ninkechi. She was nearly 80, her sight half gone, her family long scattered, and she sat by the gutter most days with a small bowl, asking for whatever people could spare. Mama Cordelia chased her away whenever she saw her. "Why are you bringing beggars to my gate?" she would scream. "Do I look like a charity?" But Ngozi, every morning she could, wrapped a small portion of gari or a piece of bread in a leaf and slipped it into the old woman's hands on her way out fast, before anybody saw. "My daughter," Mama Nkechi said that morning, her cloudy eyes turning toward the sound of Ngozi's footsteps. "You again. God will not forget this. You hear me? A person who feeds the hungry when she herself is hungry. God himself keeps that record." "Don't mind me, Mama," Ngozi whispered, pressing the bread into the woman's hands. "Just eat, and don't tell anybody." "I will not see your kindness rewarded with my eyes," the old woman said. "These eyes are finished. But somebody is watching, my daughter. Somebody is always watching the ones we think nobody sees." Ngozi laughed softly, thinking it was just the way old people talked. She did not know how true those words would turn out to be. She tied her scarf, picked up the small bag Mama Cordelia threw at her, and started the long walk to Madame Ifeoma's restaurant under the rising sun. She was 19 years old. She owned nothing, no money, no fine clothes, no one in the whole world to call her own. She had no idea that this ordinary morning was the last ordinary morning she would ever have. The restaurant kitchen was already loud and hot when Ngozi arrived. Pots the size of drums boiled on the fire. Women shouted instructions across the room. The smell of frying meat and grinding pepper filled the air so thick you could almost chew it. Madame Ifeoma stood in the center of it all like a general in her own war, a big woman in a bright orange wrapper, calling out orders and missing nothing. "You, the quiet one, Ngozi Abbey," she said when she saw her. "Good. You don't waste my time. Go and start on those plantains. And listen, today there is a man coming to discuss a big contract, very big man. When he comes, you people behave yourselves. No noise, no nonsense, yes, Ma," Ngozi said, and she went to the corner with a basket of plantains and began to peel and slice, her hands moving fast and sure, her head bent low the way it always was. She did not pay attention when the man arrived. She heard the change in the room, the way the chatter dropped, the way Madame Ifeoma's voice turned soft and respectful, but she did not look up. It was not her business to look at big men. Her business was the plantains. The man was Obinna Maduekwe. He was 31 years old. And he was, though Ngozi did not know it and would not have believed it, one of the wealthiest young men in the entire southeast. His late father had built Madwekwe Holdings from a single transport lorry into an empire. Hotels, real estate, a chain of restaurants and event centers that stretched from Enugu to Lagos. When the old man died 2 years before, Obinna had taken the whole thing on his shoulders. He was young, sharp, and famously hard to impress. People who wanted his money learned quickly that flattery bounced off him like water off a rock. He had come that day to discuss buying Madame Ifeoma's catering business as part of his expansion, a routine meeting, the kind he did 3 times a week. He expected to look at the books, taste the food, make an offer, and leave. He did not expect anything to change his life. But that was the thing about Obinna Madwekwe. He noticed things other people missed. It was how his father had taught him to survive in a world full of people who would smile in your face and rob you blind. Watch how a man treats the people who can do nothing for him, his father used to say. That is the only true measure. Everybody is sweet to the man who holds the money. Watch how they treat the boy who sweeps the floor. So while Madame Ifeoma walked him through her kitchen, talking numbers, Obinna's eyes were moving, and they landed on a girl in a faded scarf, bent over a basket of plantains in the corner, working faster and cleaner than anybody else in the room, and saying nothing at all. He watched for a while. He saw one of the senior cooks, a fat woman named Madame Grace, snap at Ngozi for no reason. "Are you blind? That slice is too thick. Do you want to waste my madam's money?" Though the slices were perfectly even. He watched Ngozi simply say, "Sorry, ma," and adjust, without a flicker of resentment. He watched her, a few minutes later, quietly take half of the bread roll from her own plate, the small lunch the workers were given, and slip it to the youngest girl in the kitchen, a thin 13-year-old apprentice whose stomach everybody could hear growling. Nobody else noticed. They were all busy, all loud, all watching the big man and hoping he would notice them. Only Obinna noticed the girl who was not trying to be noticed at all. "That girl in the corner," he said quietly to Madame Ifeoma. "Who is she?" Madame Ifeoma squinted. "Ngozi? She is a casual worker, sir. Comes when I need extra hands. Why? Is she good? Good?" Madame Ifeoma gave a short laugh. "Sir, that girl works harder than people I pay full salary. And honest. She is too honest. One time she found 2,000 naira that fell from a customer's bag, and the girl ran after the woman in the rain to return it. 2,000 naira! When I asked her why, she said the money was not hers, as if that is a normal thing to say in this Nigeria. She shook her head. But her people, so they collect all her money. The poor girl, she carries suffering like it is her birthright." Obinna said nothing more. But something had moved in him, quietly, the way the ground moves before anybody feels the earthquake. Before he left, he did something he had never done in any of his business meetings. He walked over to the corner where Ngozi was working, and he stood there until she felt his shadow and looked up. Her eyes went wide. She knew, even without being told, that this was the big man and that big men did not come to corners. She scrambled to her feet, wiping her hands. "Good afternoon, sir. I'm sorry, sir. Did you need something?" "Let me call Madame Ifeoma." No, Obinna said. "I don't need Madame Ifeoma. I came to greet you." "What is your name?" "Ngozi, sir. Ngozi Okafor." "Ngozi." He said it slowly, as if he were tasting it. "I have been watching you work, Ngozi. You are very good at what you do. And you gave your bread to that small girl just now." Ngozi's face flooded with fear. "Sir, please, I will pay for it. I didn't mean to." "No." Obinna almost smiled. "I am not accusing you. I am telling you that I saw it and that it was a good thing." He took out a card, plain, with only a phone number on it. "If you ever need work, with real pay that goes into your own hand, you call this number. You understand me? Your own hand." Ngozi took the card with both hands, the way you take something from an elder, and bowed her head. "Thank you, sir." But in her heart she was already certain she would never call it, because nothing good came free, and a man like this did not give cards to girls like her without wanting something. She had learned that lesson young, and she had the scars to remember it. Obinna Madwekwe left the restaurant that afternoon without buying it. His assistant, confused, asked him in the car why he had walked away from a good deal. "I didn't walk away from anything," Obinna said, watching the streets go by. "I just found something more interesting than a restaurant." Ngozi returned home that evening and handed every naira to Mama Cordelia, who counted it twice and complained that it was too small. She said nothing about the card hidden in the waist of her wrapper or the man who had given it to her. Some things you keep for yourself because they are the only things in the world that are yours. But here is the thing about a small house and a jealous heart. Secrets do not survive long. It was Chidinma who saw the card. 3 days later, while Ngozi was at the borehole, Chidinma went into the back room. She had no reason to be there except to snoop, which she did regularly, and she found the small card tucked into the folded wrapper. She read the number. She did not recognize it, but she recognized something else, that Ngozi, the slave, the nothing, was hiding something. And jealousy, when it finds a secret, does not ask questions, it invents answers. By the time Ngozi came back, Chidinma was waiting on the veranda with the card in her hand and a smile on her face that had no kindness in it. "Ngozi," she said sweetly. "Whose number is this?" Ngozi froze. That is nothing, Chidinma. Please give it to me." "Nothing." Chidinma stood up. Mama, come and see, come and see what your slave is hiding." Mama Cordelia came out, and within minutes the small compound had become a courtroom, with Ngozi standing in the center of it, accused. "It is a man's number, Mama," Chidinma announced, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "She is now collecting men's numbers. I have been seeing the way she dresses these days, the way she is sneaking out in the morning. Mama, this girl is now disgracing this family." "It is not true," Ngozi cried. "A man at the restaurant gave it to me. For work, only for work, I swear." "For work?" Chidinma laughed. "Which kind of work does a man give a girl his personal number for? You think we are fools? You think because you have started growing breasts you can now bring shame to this house?" "Chidinma, I beg you." Mama Cordelia snatched the card and tore it into 4 pieces and threw them into the gutter. Then she turned on Ngozi with a fury that came, as it always did, from somewhere much deeper than the moment. "Listen to me, you ungrateful thing," she said, her voice shaking. "I took you when your foolish father died and left you with nothing. Nothing. And this is my reward, that you will grow up under my roof and become a common runs girl, chasing men, dragging the Okafor name through the gutter, over my dead body. You will not bring that kind of disgrace into this house. Do you hear me?" "Mama, nothing happened, I am not." The slap came hard. Then another. Ngozi did not fall. She had learned long ago how to stay standing, how to fold the pain inward where nobody could see it. She stood with her cheek burning and tears running down her face. And she said the only thing she could say, which was the truth that nobody in that compound wanted to hear. "I did nothing wrong, but here is what cruelty never understands about itself. Every blow it strikes, it is also writing a record. Every lie it tells, it is building the case against the day of its own reckoning." Mama Cordelia thought she was teaching the girl a lesson. She did not know she was teaching her daughter Chidinma that you could destroy a person with a lie and pay no price for it. And a lesson like that, once learned, does not stop at slaps. It grows. It always grows. That night, Ngozi lay on her thin mattress in the back room and held the small pieces of her broken heart together the way she always did, with memory, with prayer, and with the stubborn, quiet refusal to become like the people who hurt her. She did not know that the man whose number now lay torn in the gutter had not forgotten her. She did not know that he had already asked Madame Ifeoma 3 more questions about the girl in the corner. She did not know that her life had already begun to turn, slowly, in a direction she could not yet see. 2 weeks passed. Madame Ifeoma sent word that she needed Ngozi again, a big society wedding, the kind where the whole of Enugu would be watching. Mama Cordelia, who never said no to money, sent her at once. And it was at that wedding, in the great hall full of lace and gold and important people, that the second meeting happened. Obinna Madwekwe was there as a guest. He was, after all, the kind of man whose absence from a society wedding would be noticed. He sat at the high table in a black agbada that probably cost more than Mama Cordelia's entire house, and he was bored, the way he was always bored at these things, until he saw a familiar figure moving among the tables with a tray of small chops. It was Ngozi. He watched her work the room, quiet, quick, invisible to the guests who took the food from her tray without ever seeing the hand that offered it, and then he watched something happen that made him put down his glass. An old man, a guest, frail and confused, knocked over a full glass of red wine onto his own white agbada and onto the floor. The whole table groaned in disgust. A waiter, one of the restaurant's senior staff, actually scolded the poor old man. "Ah, sir, see what you have done, you have stained the carpet." The old man, embarrassed, began to apologize, his hand shaking. It was Ngozi who reached him first. She knelt beside the old man, knelt, in front of all those important people, and she spoke to him gently, the way you speak to a frightened child. "It is nothing, Papa. It is only wine washes. Don't worry yourself, you hear? Let me help you." And she dabbed at his agabada with her own cloth, and she helped him to his feet. and she walked him slowly to a clean seat, and the whole time she was smiling at him as if he were the most important person in that entire hall, which, to her, in that moment he was. Obinna stood up from the high table. People noticed. When a man like Obinna Maduekwe stands, people notice. He walked across the hall and the room began to quiet, everybody wondering where the great man was going. He walked straight to where Ngozi was settling the old man into his seat, and he stopped, and he said, into the growing silence, "Ngozi." She turned, and her face went pale. "Sir." She glanced around at all the watching eyes, and her voice dropped to a frightened whisper. "Sir, please, did I do something wrong? I'm sorry, I was only helping the old." "You did nothing wrong," Obinna said, and he said it loudly, so the whole hall could hear. "You did the only right thing in this entire room. Everybody here was looking at the stain on the carpet. You were the only person who looked at the man." He turned to the watching crowd, to all the rich and important people. "Remember this, all of you, the carpet can be cleaned. A person's dignity, once you step on it, is much harder to wash." Then he turned back to Ngozi. "When you finish your work today, I want to speak with you. I will wait." And he did. He waited 2 hours, sitting in his car in the compound while she finished her duties, ignoring 3 phone calls about business worth more money than most people see in a lifetime, because some things are worth waiting for, and a man who has everything finally understands that the only thing worth having is the thing that money cannot buy. When Ngozi finally came out into the dark compound, exhausted, her feet aching, she saw the car still there and the man standing beside it, and her heart began to pound with fear. She had heard stories. Big men who waited for poor girls in dark compounds wanted only one thing, and it was never good. "Sir," she said, keeping her distance, "you said you wanted to speak with me." "I did. Will you sit in the car? It is cold." "I promise you." He saw the fear in her eyes and stopped. "No, you don't know me. You are right to be careful. We will stand here, in the open, where anybody can see. Is that better?" The fact that he understood her fear and respected it did more to calm her than any promise could have. She nodded. "Ngozi," he said, "I am not a man who wastes words, so I will tell you the truth plainly. My name is Obinna Maduekwe. I run my late father's businesses. I am, by most people's measure, a very wealthy man. I am telling you this, not to impress you, but so that you understand I do not need anything from you. There is nothing you have that I cannot buy 1,000 times over. So believe me when I say that what I am about to offer you, I offer with a clean heart." Ngozi said nothing. She had learned that the safest thing to do with powerful men was to stay quiet and wait. "I have watched you twice now," Obinna went on, "at the restaurant and tonight, and both times I saw the same thing, a person who, when she has nothing, still gives. A person who, when nobody is watching, still does right. Do you know how rare that is? I am surrounded every single day by people who are kind only when it pays. People who smile at me because of my money and would not spit on a poor man to save his life. I had begun to think that the kind of goodness my father told me about did not exist anymore." He paused. "And then I saw a girl give away her own bread. Sir, let me finish. I am offering you a job, a real job in my head office in Enugu, to start as an assistant in the kitchen of my flagship hotel, with a proper salary paid into your own bank account in your own name. A place to stay in the staff quarters if you need it. A chance to learn, to grow, to become whatever you are capable of becoming. I am offering you a door, Ngozi. Whether you walk through it is entirely your choice. I will not be offended if you say no." For a long moment, Ngozi could not speak. The offer was so large, so impossible, that her mind could not hold it. A salary, her own account, her own name. A door out of the back room with the leaking roof. And then the old fear came rushing back, cold and familiar. "Sir," she whispered. "Why? Why me? I am nobody. I have nothing. Men like you do not give things like this to girls like me for nothing. There is always a price. What do you want from me?" Obinna was quiet for a moment, and then, instead of being offended, he nodded slowly, as if she had said something wise. "That is a good question," he said. "It is the right question, and the fact that you asked it makes me even more sure of you. So I will answer it honestly. What do I want? I want to prove something, to myself, mostly. My father told me that the measure of a person is how they treat those who can do nothing for them. I have spent my whole life being treated well by people who wanted my money. I have never once, in my whole life, been treated kindly by someone who knew I could not pay them back. And you did that. You did not know who I was. You gave your bread to that small girl when there was no profit in it. You knelt for that old man when there was only embarrassment in it." He looked at her steadily. "I am not offering you this job because I want something from you, Ngozi. I am offering it because for the first time in a long time, I met someone I respect. And I have learned that when you meet a person like that, you do not let the world grind them into dust. That is all. That is the whole price. There is no other. Ngozi looked at this man, this stranger, and for the first time in 9 years she felt something she had almost forgotten the name of. It was not love, not yet. It was something simpler and stronger. It was the feeling of being seen. I have to think, she said finally. And there is my family, Mama Cordelia. It will not be simple. I understand, Obinna said. Take all the time you need, but not too much time. And there, in the dark, he almost smiled. Here is my number again. This time, perhaps keep it somewhere safer. She took the card. She held it tight, and as the car drove away, Ngozi Okafor stood alone in the compound under the stars and allowed herself, for one dangerous moment, to imagine a different life. She should have known better than to imagine. In that house, dreams were dangerous things. It was Chidinma, again, who ruined it. She had followed Ngozi to the wedding venue out of jealousy. She had wanted to attend the society wedding herself, and see that the slave was going while she stayed home. So she had stood at the gate of the venue in the crowd of onlookers, and she had seen the whole thing. She had seen the great Obinna Maduekwe, whom everybody in Enugu knew, whose face was in the newspapers, stand up from the high table and cross the entire hall for a common cleaner. She had seen 2 hours in the dark. She had seen him give Ngozi a card. And something inside Chidinma, something that had always been twisted further that night until it broke. She got home before Ngozi and went straight to her mother, breathless, her eyes wild. Mama, she said. Mama, you will not believe what I saw with my own 2 eyes. By the time Ngozi walked through the gate, the trap was already set. So, Mama Cordelia said, rising from her chair, her voice terrifyingly calm. Obinna Maduekwe, the billionaire. He waited 2 hours for you in the dark. He gave you his card. And you were going to keep all of this from me, your own mother, the woman who raised you. Mama, it is not what you think. Then tell me what to think. The woman shouted, and the calm broke like a dam. Tell me what a man worth billions of naira wants with a kitchen rag like you, eh? You think I was born yesterday? You think I don't know what is happening? You have been selling yourself. You have been spreading your legs for rich men and bringing their dirty money and dirty names into my house. No, Mama, I swear on my dead father's grave, don't you dare mention your father. Your father is the reason you are like this. That foolish man filled your head with rubbish about goodness and honesty until you don't even know your level. Look at you, ordinary cleaner. You think because a rich man looked at you twice, you are now somebody? You think you can leave this house and go and live big and forget us? Over my dead body. And there it was, the real fear underneath the rage. Mama Cordelia did not care about Ngozi's virtue. She cared that her free labor, her unpaid slave, was about to walk out the door. The girl who fetched and carried and cooked and cleaned for 9 years without a single naira of her own was about to become free. And a person who has grown comfortable owning another human being does not give up that ownership easily. You will not go to any office, Mama Cordelia said, her voice low and final. You will not call that man, you will tear that card, and you will forget you ever saw his face. From today, you do not leave this compound without my permission. You will not even go to Madame Ifeoma's again. You think I will let you run away from your responsibilities to this family? Never. You owe us. After everything we have spent on you, you owe us your whole life. And you will pay it here, in this house, where you belong. Ngozi stood there, and for the first time in 9 years, she felt something rise in her chest that was not fear and was not sadness. It was something hot and clear and steady. It was the thing her father had given her, the thing that 9 years of cruelty had not been able to kill. I do not owe you my life, she said quietly. The compound went silent. Even the crickets seemed to stop. What did you say? Mama Cordelia whispered. I said I do not owe you my life. Ngozi's voice was shaking, but she did not look away. I have worked in this house since I was 10 years old. I have cooked every meal you have eaten. I have washed every cloth you have worn. I have fetched the water you bathe with and swept the ground you walk on, and in 9 years you have not given me 1 naira, 1 kind word, 1 day of rest. I have paid, Mama. Whatever you spent on me, I paid it back 100 times, with these 2 hands. I do not owe you anything, and I am tired. For a moment, nobody moved, and then Chidinma stepped forward and slapped her, hard, across the face. How dare you talk to my mother like that, you common? But this time, Ngozi did not bend her head and fold the pain inward. This time she caught Chidinma's wrist before the second blow could land, and she held it, and she looked her stepsister in the eyes. "No more," she said. "Do you hear me? No more." She let go of the wrist, and she walked past both of them, into the back room, and she shut the door. She did not sleep that night. She sat on the thin mattress with the card in her hand, and somewhere in the long dark hours before morning, Ngozi Okafor made a decision that would change everything. She was going to walk through the door. She did not run away in the night, the way a frightened person runs. Ngozi was not built that way. She did it in the open in the morning with her head up. She called the number at 6 in the morning, standing by the borehole where no one could hear. Obinna answered on the second ring, as though he had been waiting. "It is Ngozi, sir," she said. "I have thought about it. If the offer is still standing, I will take it. But, sir, I must tell you the truth. Because you have been honest with me, my family will not let me go quietly. There may be trouble." "There is always trouble for people who try to better themselves," Obinna said. "That is how you know you are doing something worth doing. Tell me where you are. I will send someone today. And Ngozi, you will not face the trouble alone. You understand me? Not alone." That afternoon, a quiet, professional woman named Mrs. Adeyeze Nwosu arrived at the compound. She was Obinna's head of human resources, a sharp, no-nonsense woman in her 50s who had seen everything and was afraid of nobody. She came with a driver and a single document, a standard offer of employment, with Ngozi's name on it and a starting salary written in clear figures. 185,000 naira per month. Mama Cordelia took one look at that figure and her whole manner changed. The screaming stopped. The insults stopped. Suddenly, she was all sweetness, all open arms. "Ah, madame, you are welcome, you are welcome. Sit, let me bring you something. So my daughter Ngozi will be working in the big hotel. What a blessing. Of course, as her mother I will manage her account for her. She is only a child, she does not know money." "That will not be necessary," Mrs. Nwosu said coldly. "The salary will be paid into an account in Miss Okafor's name only." Mr. Maduekwe was very specific about that. Her money, her hand. Those were his exact words. The sweetness flickered, but as her mother. "Are you her mother?" Mrs. Nwosu asked, looking at the document. "It says here her parents are both deceased. It says you are her father's widow. That is not the same thing as her mother, madame. Legally, Miss Okafor is 19 years old. She is an adult. She does not need your permission to take a job, and she does not need you to manage her money. She needs you to let her pack her bag." It was the first time in 9 years that anybody had stood between Ngozi and Mama Cordelia, and Ngozi watched it happen with something close to disbelief. She packed her things in under 10 minutes. There was not much, 2 wrappers, a Bible that had been her father's, a small photograph of her mother so faded you could barely see the face. As she carried her small bag across the compound for the last time, Chichijima stood on the veranda with her arms folded and hatred in her eyes. "Enjoy it while it lasts," Chijima said softly, so only Ngozi could hear. "People like you don't get to keep good things. You will see. One way or another, you will come crawling back to this gutter where you belong. And I will be here, waiting to laugh." Ngozi stopped. She looked at her stepsister for a long moment and then she said something her father might have said. "I hope that one day you find something to make you happy, Chidinma," she said quietly. "Something better than my suffering, because if my pain is the only thing that brings you joy, then you are poorer than I have ever been." She walked out of the gate. On her way, she stopped at the gutter where old Mama Nkechi sat, and she pressed something into the old woman's hand. Not bread this time, but money, her very first money, an envelope Mrs. Nwosu had given her as an advance. "My daughter," Mama Nkechi breathed, feeling the notes with her cloudy eyes turned up to heaven. "What is this? This is too much. Ngozi, what has happened to you?" "Somebody was watching, Mama," Ngozi said, her voice breaking. "You were right. Somebody was watching after all." And she got into the car, and she drove away from the only home she had known, toward a life she could not yet imagine, not knowing that the people she left behind were not finished with her. Not by a long way. The next 3 months were the happiest of Ngozi's life. The Maduekwe Grand Hotel was a different world. For the first time, she had a small, clean room of her own in the staff quarters, with a roof that did not leak and a door that locked. For the first time, she ate 3 meals a day and nobody counted the bread. She worked hard, harder than anyone. But now her work had a name on it and a wage attached to it. And at the end of every month, a number appeared in an account that belonged to her and nobody else. She would check the balance on a small phone and read her own name on the screen and have to stop herself from crying in public. She rose quickly, because talent always rises when it is finally given air. Within 2 months, she had moved from kitchen assistant to a supervisor's role, trusted with the things nobody else could be trusted with, because everyone learned what Obinna had already seen, that Ngozi Okafor did not lie, did not steal, did not cut corners, and treated the lowest cleaner with the same respect she gave the highest manager. And Obinna found reasons to be at that hotel far more often than his business required. They talked about her father, about his father, about the strange loneliness that lived inside both wealth and poverty. He never pushed, he never presumed. He courted her the way a patient man courts something precious, with respect, with time, with 1,000 small kindnesses that asked for nothing in return. When he finally told her one evening on the hotel rooftop with the whole city glittering below them that he had fallen in love with her, Ngozi wept. Not from sorrow, for once, but because she had spent her whole life being told she was worth nothing, and here was a good man telling her she was worth everything. "Why are you crying?" he asked, alarmed. "Because," she said, laughing through the tears, "for 9 years the only thing anybody ever told me was that I did not deserve good things. And I am crying because I think I'm finally starting to believe them. I think I'm finally starting to believe I do." He took her hand. "You deserve all of it," he said, "and anybody who ever told you otherwise was lying to keep you small. Marry me, Ngozi, not because I am rich, because you are the best person I have ever met, and I do not intend to spend my life with anyone else." She said yes, and for a little while the world was perfect, but the people she had left behind in that small compound had heard the news. They had heard that the slave was going to marry a billionaire, and in a heart already twisted by jealousy, that news did not bring shame or regret, or even simple sadness. It brought a plan. The plan was Chidinma's, but Mama Cordelia blessed it the way she blessed everything that fed her bitterness. "She thinks she can leave us in the gutter and go and live big," Chidinma said, pacing the small parlor. "She thinks she has won. But Mama, a wedding can be stopped. A reputation can be destroyed. All we need is for the great Obinna Maduekwe to see who Ngozi really is. A thief, a liar, a girl of no character. And once he sees it, he will throw her back to us like a spoiled mango, and she will spend the rest of her life knowing she was almost free and we took it from her." She smiled. "And I will be there to laugh." It was, even for them, a cruelty so deep it should have frightened them. It did not. That is the thing about people who have decided another human being is beneath them. There is almost nothing they will not do, because, in their minds, they are not really doing it to a person at all. There was a woman in the family's network, a former employee of the hotel named Patience, who had been dismissed by Ngozi herself 2 weeks earlier for stealing from the staff lockers. Patience nursed a grudge, and a grudge is a door that the wicked always find. Through Patience, Chidinma learned the layout of the hotel, the schedule of the cash office, the days when large amounts of money, wedding deposits, event payments, passed through Ngozi's supervision. And then they came. On a Tuesday, the 7th of the month, they came to the hotel, Mama Cordelia and Chidinma, dressed in their finest, smiling, asking for Ngozi. Ngozi, when she was told her family had come to visit, felt her stomach turn to ice. But she was not a child anymore, and she would not hide. She came down to the staff sitting room to meet them, and Mama Cordelia rose with open arms and tears in her eyes that did not reach the rest of her face. "My daughter!" she cried, loud enough for the staff to hear. "My Ngozi! Ah, look at you! Look how God has blessed you! We have missed you so much. We came to make peace, my child. Whatever happened between us, let us put it behind us. You are getting married. Your own mother must be part of your joy, Abi." Ngozi was not fooled. But she had been raised by a good man, and a good man's daughter does not turn even a false peace away at the door. "You are welcome," she said carefully. "Sit, let me get you something to drink." What happened next, the cameras would later tell better than any witness. While Ngozi was distracted pouring drinks, Chidinma asked to use the staff toilet, and on the way, guided by Patience's information, she slipped into the small office adjoining the cash room where Ngozi kept her supervisor's bag and her keys. She took an envelope of cash from the day's deposits, exactly 240,000 naira, and she did 2 things with it. Most of it she hid inside the lining of her own handbag, but one bundle, 40,000 naira, she slipped deep into the side pocket of Ngozi's bag. The bag everyone knew was Ngozi's, beneath her spare uniform. Then she returned, smiling, and sat down and drank her drink. An hour later, when the cash office did its routine count and found 240,000 naira missing, the alarm went up. The hotel had a strict protocol for theft. Every bag in the staff area was to be searched. including supervisors, no exceptions, because Obinna Maduekwe's father had built that company on the principle that the rules apply to everybody or they apply to nobody. And when they searched Ngozi's bag, they found 40,000 naira hidden beneath her uniform. The room went silent. "Ngozi," the duty manager said, her face pale. "Can you explain this?" Ngozi stared at the money in his hand as if it were a snake. That is not mine. I have never seen it. I did not put it there, someone." Her eyes went slowly to Chidinma, who sat with a look of perfect performed shock on her face. "Ngozi," Chidinma gasped. "You, after everything, you stole? Oh my God. Mama, do you see? Do you see what she has done? The shame she has brought." "It was you," Ngozi said very quietly. "You did this." "Me?" Chidinma stood up, all wounded innocence. "I have been sitting here this whole time. Everyone saw me. How can you accuse me to cover your own crime? This is exactly the kind of person she is. She will lie, she will steal, and then she will blame innocent people." She turned to the manager, to the gathering staff. "I am her sister. I know her. We tried to warn this hotel. A girl from her background, what did you expect? A leopard does not change its spots. You can take a girl out of the gutter, but you cannot take the gutter out of the girl." It was a performance worthy of a stage, and for a terrible moment it worked. The staff looked at Ngozi, who had risen so fast, the poor girl the boss had favored, and some of them, the small-minded ones, the jealous ones, began to nod. Of course. It made sense to them. People like that always disappoint you in the end. Ngozi felt the floor opening beneath her. She felt 9 years of being told she was nothing rushing back up to swallow her whole. And in that moment, Chidinma made her move. The move that was the whole point of the visit. The knife beneath the lie. She stepped close to Ngozi, close enough to whisper, and under her breath, where no one could hear, she said, "Now come back to the gutter where you belong. You have nothing. You are nothing. You will always be nothing." And then louder, for the crowd, "Ngozi, please, just confess. Don't make it worse. Come home with us. We forgive you." What Chidinma did next, she did not plan. It came from somewhere deep and ugly, a lifetime of contempt boiling over in the moment she thought she had won. She grabbed Ngozi by the arm and yanked her, hard, toward the door. "Let's go. You thief, you have disgraced us enough." And Ngozi, off balance, pulled back, and Chidinma shoved her with both hands. Ngozi fell. She fell backward, and there was a low marble step behind her that nobody was thinking about, and the back of her head struck the edge of it with a sound that everyone in that room would hear in their nightmares for the rest of their lives. A wet, heavy, final sound. And then Ngozi Okafor was lying very still on the cold marble floor, and a thin dark line of blood was spreading slowly across the white tile, and the room that had been so loud a moment before went completely, terribly silent. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Then the screaming started. And here is where the wickedness showed its truest face. Because even then, even with the girl bleeding on the floor, Mama Cordelia's first instinct was not to help. It was to manage the story. "Don't touch her!" she shouted as a young waiter rushed forward. She fell by herself. Everybody saw. She fell by herself. She was trying to run. Nobody pushed her. She is pretending, Ngozi. "Get up. Stop this drama. Get up." But Ngozi did not get up, and the delay that followed, the precious, irreplaceable minutes that Mama Cordelia insisting the girl was faking, arguing with the staff, refusing to let anyone call an ambulance, because an ambulance meant police and police meant questions. Those minutes would matter more than anyone in that room understood, because of what happens in the human brain when it bleeds. It was the duty manager, finally, who pushed past them and called the emergency line, and it was 23 minutes. 23 minutes that should have been 3. Before Ngozi was lifted onto a stretcher and rushed to the university teaching hospital, with Chidinma and Mama Cordelia still insisting to anyone who would listen that the girl had fallen on her own. Obinna Maduekwe got the call at 4:51 in the afternoon. He was in a board meeting. He left without a word, drove himself to the hospital at a speed that should have killed him, and arrived to find Ngozi already in surgery, and a doctor named Dr. Ezin Okeke waiting to speak with him, with the careful, gentle face that doctors wear when the news is not good. "Mr. Maduekwe," Dr. Oke said, "I want to be honest with you, because you will hear half-truths otherwise. Ngozi suffered a serious blow to the back of the head, to the occipital region. That part of the brain, the occipital lobe, is where the brain processes what the eyes see. The eyes themselves are fine, but the part of the brain that turns light into sight has been injured." "What does that mean?" Obinna's voice was not steady. "Tell me plainly. It means there is swelling and bleeding pressing on that region. We are operating now to relieve the pressure. If we had reached her sooner. The doctor stopped and chose her words. The delay made it worse, much worse. When the brain bleeds, every minute counts, and she lost too many minutes before she got to us. Will she see? Dr. Oakake held his eyes. I cannot promise you that. The truth is, I do not know. When she wakes, if the surgery goes well and she wakes, her vision may be partly or completely lost. The brain is not a machine you can simply repair. Sometimes, over months, with the swelling gone, it heals and some sight returns. Sometimes it does not. I will not lie to you and say it will be fine, and I will not lie to you and say it is hopeless. What I will say is this: the next 72 hours will tell us a great deal, and whatever happens, she is going to need people around her who will not leave. Obinna sat down very slowly in the plastic hospital chair, this man who owned hotels and lorries and half a city, and he put his face in his hands and he wept like a child. 3 days later, Ngozi woke up, and the world was dark. Obinna! Her voice was small and frightened in the hospital room. Obinna, are you there? Why is it so dark? Why can't I? I can't see anything. Obinna, what is wrong with my eyes? He was beside her in an instant, holding her hand in both of his. I am here. I am right here. I am not going anywhere. I can't see your face. She was crying now, her hands reaching for him in the dark. I can hear you, but I can't see you. What happened to me? What happened to my eyes? He could have lied. People had told him to lie, to soften it, to wait. But he had built his whole regard for this woman on the foundation of telling her the truth, and he would not betray that now, not even to spare her pain. You hit your head when you fell, he said gently. The part of your brain that handles sight was injured. Right now you cannot see. The doctors do not know yet whether it will come back. It might, over time. It might not. I am not going to lie to you, Ngozi. I am going to be here while we find out. She was quiet for a long time, and then she asked the question that broke his heart. Will you still want me, she whispered, if I am blind? Obinna took her face in his hands, gently, this woman whose eyes could no longer find him. Listen to me, he said, and his voice shook with the force of it. I did not fall in love with your eyes. I fell in love with what you do when you think nobody is watching. I fell in love with a girl who gave away her bread, who knelt for the old man, who returned money that fell from a stranger's bag in the rain. None of that lived in your eyes, Ngozi. All of it lives in your heart. And your heart is not injured. Your heart is the strongest thing I have ever known. I am going to marry you. Blind or sighted, rich or poor, I am going to marry you. And the only thing that has changed is that now I get to be the eyes that describe the world to you. And I cannot think of a single thing I would rather do with my life. He pressed his forehead to hers. So no, I do not still want you in spite of this. I want you. Full stop. There is no condition on the end of that sentence. She wept, and he held her. And outside the door the storm was already gathering, because not everyone in Obinna's world believed a blind cleaner was fit to be the wife of the head of the Maduekwe Empire. That storm had a name, and the name was Mrs. Folake Maduekwe, Obinna's mother. She was a proud woman, elegant and respected and fierce, who had spent 2 years worrying that her only son would never marry, and who had imagined, when he finally did, a daughter-in-law from a great family, a girl with a degree and a pedigree and the right surname. A poor orphan cleaner had not been in her imagination. A blind poor orphan cleaner was, to her, simply impossible. She came to the hospital, and she did not go into Ngozi's room. She took Obinna out into the corridor, and she said the things that pride says. Obinna, I have been quiet. I held my peace when you brought home a cleaner, because I told myself it would pass. But this you must end. A blind woman cannot be the wife of a man in your position. She cannot run a home. She cannot stand beside you at functions. She cannot manage anything. People will say you married out of pity. They will say the great Maduekwe heir could not find a whole woman, so he settled for a broken one. I am thinking of you. I am thinking of this family. End it now, gently, with money if you must, and let her go. Obinna looked at his mother for a long moment, and when he spoke his voice was very quiet, which was when he was most dangerous. Mama, he said. Do you remember what Papa used to about how you measure a person? Obinna. By how they treat the people who can do nothing for them. Obinna's eyes did not move from her face. Right now Ngozi can do nothing for me. She has no money, no eyes, no family, nothing in this whole world except a heart so good it shames every wealthy person I have ever met, including, I am sorry to say, the people in our own family. So by Papa's measure, your husband's measure, the measure this whole empire was built on, the question is not whether Ngozi is good enough for me. The question is whether I am good enough for her. And if I walk away from her now, in the dark, when she has nothing, then I have failed that test completely. Then everything Papa built me to be was a lie. He paused. You call my love for her pity? It is not pity, Mama. Pity walks away when it gets hard. This is the opposite of pity. This is the only thing I have ever done in my life that Papa would actually be proud of. Mrs. Folake Maduekwe opened her mouth to answer and found she had nothing to say. But it was not Obinna's words that changed her. Words rarely change a proud heart. It was what she saw 3 days later when she finally went into that hospital room, quietly, when she thought no one was watching. She saw her son, the most powerful young man in the southeast, sitting on a low stool beside the bed, slowly and patiently feeding pepper soup to a blind girl, spoon by spoon, describing each thing as he did it. This one has small fish, be careful of the bone, and laughing softly with her over some private joke. She saw the girl's face turn toward the sound of his voice the way a flower turns toward the sun. She saw, in short, something she had not seen in her own life in a very long time, something that all her money had never bought her. She saw two people who loved each other completely, with nothing held back, with no condition on the end of the sentence. And Mrs. Folake Maduekwe, standing in the doorway, began quietly to cry. Ngozi, she said, and her voice was not the voice of a proud woman anymore. My daughter, forgive me, I have been a foolish old woman looking at the wrong things my whole life. May I come in? But while love was healing one family, justice was sharpening its knife for another. Because Obinna Maduekwe, even in his grief, had not forgotten one thing. Somebody had put that money in Ngozi's bag, and somebody had pushed her onto that marble step, and somebody was going to answer for it. And the answer was already on tape. Obinna's father had built that hotel, and he had built it with a businessman's hard wisdom. Cameras everywhere money moved. Not the old, blurry kind. High-definition cameras, the kind that miss nothing. In the cash office, in the corridor, in the small adjoining room where the supervisors kept their bags. The police came, real police, not the kind a bribe could send away, because Obinna Maduekwe made one phone call to a commissioner he golfed with, and the matter was suddenly very important. And the security team sat the investigating officers down in a small, dark room and played them the footage. It was all there. There was no lie that could survive it. The camera showed Chidinma leaving the sitting room. It showed her, with the timestamp running in the corner, 2:14 p.m., slipping into the cash office. It showed her opening the deposit envelope, counting out the money, hiding the bulk of it in her own handbag, and then, and this was the part the officers watched twice, crossing to Ngozi's bag, lifting the spare uniform, and tucking 40,000 naira underneath. The angle was perfect. Her face was perfectly clear. There was no innocent explanation, no shadow of doubt, no room left for performance. And then the corridor camera showed the rest, showed Chidinma grabbing Ngozi's arm, showed the struggle, showed both hands come up and shove, showed Ngozi fall and her head meet the marble. It even showed, in the seconds after, Mama Cordelia gesturing wildly, mouth moving, clearly telling the gathering staff that no body had pushed anyone. The lead investigator, a quiet older man named Inspector Bassi, watched it all to the end. Then he sat back and exhaled slowly. In 30 years, he said, I have rarely seen a case this clean. We have theft, captured on camera. We have assault, causing bodily harm, captured on camera. And we have an attempt to obstruct medical help and pervert the investigation, with multiple witnesses. He looked up at Obinna. Sir, these two women are going to prison. The only question is for how long. The arrests happened at the small compound at 6:30 in the morning, 3 days later. Mama Cordelia and Chidinma were sleeping when the police knocked, still telling themselves they had gotten away with it, still rehearsing the lie that Ngozi had fallen on her own. They came out shouting, threatening, demanding to know who had dared. And then they were shown a photograph, a single frozen frame from the camera, Chidinma's clear face, her hand tucking the money into Ngozi's bag, and the shouting stopped. Chidinma's mouth opened and closed. She looked, in that moment, not like a clever schemer, but like exactly what she was, a small, frightened person who had built her whole life on the belief that she could hurt people beneath her and never pay. And the bill had finally come. The trial was short, because there was nothing to argue. The video spoke. The hospital records spoke. Dr. Okeke testified, plainly and without drama, about the occipital injury, and how the 23-minute delay, the delay caused by Mama Cordelia's insistence that the girl was faking, had turned a serious injury into a possibly permanent one. The forensic accountant traced the rest of the stolen money to the lining of Chidinma's own handbag. Chidinma was convicted of theft, of assault occasioning grievous bodily harm, and her sentence was 7 years. Mama Cordelia was convicted of being an accessory and of obstruction, for the delay that may have cost Ngozi her sight, and her sentence was 4 years. The judge, a stern woman with tired eyes, said something before she passed sentence that the people in that courtroom never forgot. What I find most disturbing about this case, the judge said, is not the theft. People steal money every day. What disturbs me is the contempt. These two defendants did not merely steal. They decided that another human being was so far beneath them that her dignity, her freedom, even her eyesight, were things they could take without consequence, as casually as you might step on an insect. They were wrong. This court exists precisely to teach the lesson that they refused to learn, that there is no human being, so poor, so low, so powerless, that the law will let you treat them as less than human. And as they were led away, Chidinma turned and looked, for the last time, at the courtroom, at Ngozi. Sitting in the front row, blind, holding Obinna's hand, her faded photograph of her mother in her lap. And whatever Chidinma had expected to see on the face of the girl she had destroyed, she did not see it. She did not see triumph. She did not see hatred. She saw something far worse, something she had no defense against at all. She saw pity. The doctors had said it might come back. They had said the next months would tell, and so the next months became a kind of patient waiting, the kind of waiting that love makes bearable. Ngozi and Obinna married 4 months after the trial, in a small ceremony, nothing like the grand society weddings Ngozi used to serve at. She wore white. She could not see the dress, so Obinna described it to her, every bead, every fold, in a low voice as they stood before the priest, and things wept to hear it. And the guests, Falak, Maduekwe, stood beside her new daughter the whole day, holding her arm, describing from the faces of the well-wishers, having finally learned, late but truly, the thing her husband had always known, that the eyes are not where a person's worth is kept. And old Mama Nkechi was there too. In the front row, in a fine new wrapper, the blind old beggar woman who had once told Hungry Girl that somebody was always watching. She and Ngozi sat together sometimes after that, 2 blind women holding hands, and the older one would say, "You see, my daughter. You see how God keeps record?" And Ngozi would laugh and say, "No, Mama, I do not see, but I believe you." 5 months after our wedding, on an ordinary Tuesday morning, Ngozi woke up and there was light, just a little, at first a grey blur, a smudge of brightness where the window was. She did not believe it. She lay very still, afraid to move, afraid it would vanish. Then she saw a shape move across the brightness and she heard Obinna's voice say, "Good morning." And for the first time in nearly a year, she saw, faintly, blurred, but unmistakably, the shape of her husband's face. She did not get all of her sight back. The doctors had been honest about that, and they were right. The central vision in one eye remained damaged, and she would always need glasses, and there were things her eyes would never again do perfectly. But she could see. She could see Obinna's face, and the color of the sky, and the words in her father's Bible if she held it close, and that was more than the doctors in those first dark days had dared to promise. The first thing she asked to see, when she could see well enough to travel, was her father's grave. Obinna took her to Umuahia, to the small overgrown plot where Pa Keke Okafor had been buried 9 years before, and Ngozi knelt in the grass and cleared the weeds from the headstone with her own 2 hands, the way she had once cleared weeds from a stepmother's farm, and she read his name aloud, slowly, because she could read it now. "You were right, Papa," she whispered. "You always said that being good was not foolishness, even when the whole world treated it like foolishness. You said goodness keeps its own accounts, and one day the books balance. I did not believe you all those years. But the books balanced, Papa. They balanced. She did not become a different person when she became rich. That is the thing about Ngozi that mattered most, the thing that this whole story is really about. She used the Maduekwe money to build something, a small foundation, run out of a single office at first. That did one thing. It found the children working as unpaid servants in other people's homes, the ones everybody pretends not to see. The ones who fetch and carry and sleep in storerooms and get blamed for everything. And it got them out, and it put them in school, and it gave them what nobody had given her until she was 19 years old, a door. She called it the Oatcake Foundation after her father. Her first hire was the thin 13-year-old apprentice from Madame Iphioma's kitchen, the one she had once given half her bread to. Her second was Patience, the woman who had betrayed her, who came one day weeping to beg forgiveness and whom Ngozi forgave and hired and trusted because she had learned from her father that the only way to break the chain of cruelty is to refuse, finally, to pass it on. Mama Nkechi, the old blind beggar, lived out her last years in comfort, in a clean room with a roof that did not leak, and she died peacefully, and Ngozi was holding her hand when she went. Chidinma and Mama Cordelia served their years. What became of them after, this story does not follow, because some accounts are not ours to close. They belong to the people who must live inside them. But it is said that Ngozi paid, quietly and anonymously, for Chidinma's continued education while she was inside, on one condition communicated through a lawyer, that the money was never to be explained and that no thanks were ever to be given. When asked why by the only person she ever told, Ngozi said simply, "Because somebody has to be the one who stops. And it might as well be me." I have told this story many times now to many different people, and I have noticed that everybody listens for a different ending. Some people want to hear about the prison sentences. They want the part where the wicked are punished, and I understand that there is something in all of us that aches to see the scales finally balance, especially in a world where so often they do not. Some people want to hear about the billionaire and the wedding, the poor girl lifted up into a soft life, and I understand that too, because we all carry a small secret hope that goodness will one day be repaid in full. But if you ask me, the most important part of this story is none of those things. The most important part is a piece of bread. Long before Obinna Maduekwe ever saw her, before any of it, when Ngozi had nothing and was nothing in the eyes of everyone around her, she wrapped a piece of bread in a leaf every morning and pressed it into the hand of an old blind woman who could never, ever pay her back. Nobody saw her do it. There was no profit in it, no audience, no reward. She did it for the oldest and simplest reason there is, because the old woman was hungry, and she was a person, and that was enough. That is the whole thing, really. That is where everything else came from. Obinna did not fall in love with Ngozi at the wedding or in the office. He fell in love with her in that kitchen, watching a girl who had been given nothing still find something to give. The dignity she carried through all those years of cruelty, it was never something the world gave her, so it was never something the world could take away. The slaps could not reach it. The lies could not reach it. Even the darkness, when it came, could not reach it. So here is the only lesson I will leave you with, and I will say it plainly because it is too important to dress up. Be careful how you treat the people who can do nothing for you. The cleaner, the security man at the gate, the old woman by the gutter, the quiet girl in the corner whom everybody talks over. You do not know who they are, you do not know who is watching, and more than that, it should not matter who they are or who is watching, because the measure of your own soul is not how you treat the powerful who can reward you, but how you treat the powerless who cannot. Ngozi understood that when she had nothing. The question this story leaves at your feet is whether you understand it now, while you still have the chance to choose. Somebody is always watching the ones we think nobody sees.